Good morning, everyone. This is Julie McDonald with Microcom Technologies, and I'd like to thank all of you for attending today's webinar with Cambium Networks. Today's host is John Mead, and he is their Senior Director of Engineering and Product Development, and he'll be presenting today. If anyone has any questions, please submit them in the question box, and John will answer them at the end of today's presentation. John, thank you so much for being with us today. I am finished for now. Please go ahead and take it on.
Great. Thank you very much, Julie, and hello to everybody. Thank you very much for attending today. Probably 30 minutes, 45 minutes. I've given some of these presentations before. If you've seen this one before, I have a little bit of new information, changed it up a little bit. Some of it may be a repeat for you. If there is any topic that you see today that you want to do a deeper dive on, absolutely, we can set up a one-on-one meeting or whatever you'd like to do. That's a possibility as well. So I'll jump right into things here. So today's topics, I'm going to go over Cambium's Ethernet switching portfolio. I'm going to talk about the entire portfolio and give you a high-level overview on the entire portfolio. That includes our tower switches and our enterprise switches. Tower switches are kind of exciting. You know, they're not shipping yet, so giving you a sneak peek on those. And then policy-based automation. I will never do a presentation where I don't talk about this. You can buy switches today in the industry from a lot of vendors, and they're all good. Switching is pretty mature technology. We have this feature called PBA, policy-based automation, that is a true differentiator. So I want to spend some time talking about that. And then hopefully I'll have time in the end. I want to do a live demo with you guys, talking about our cloud-based management, CN Maestro, and using that with PBA to show you how we can automate the configuration of our switches. Okay, then we'll end up with some Q&A. All right, so here we go. This slide right here shows you that we have 3 different families of Ethernet switches targeted at 3 different deployment scenarios or 3 different use cases. So we didn't build just one switch for all 3 use cases. These switches are designed specifically purpose-built for each of these use cases. In addition to these 3 different segments, I am also saying that CN Maestro, this is Cambium's cloud-based solution, does work across all of our switches. So you can use CN Maestro, and I'm going to talk a lot about CN Maestro today. You can use CN Maestro to manage all of these Ethernet switches as well as all your other Cambium products. So one single management for your entire Cambium solution. Okay, starting with the enterprise indoor access switch. This is a family of switches that we started developing first. We've been shipping for almost 2 years now. And I'll tell you more about what we have. We have 2 families within the enterprise space. We have the EX2K and the EX1K. I'll elaborate on that more later. Between those 2 series, we have 12 SKUs to choose from. Sounds like a lot, right? How do you know which switch to pick? I'll go into more details later. It's really easy to narrow it down to the ideal switch for you, but we have 8-port models, 24-port models, 48-port models, ports with PoE, ports without PoE, and so on. Also, the third bullet here, one of our switches is a multi-gig switch, right? So it supplies more than your standard 1 gig of bandwidth on these ports. We support up to 2.5 gig, and this is the 802.3 BZ standard, which is what you don't have to have it. You can use a 1 gig port, but it'd be nice to have it for your Wi-Fi 6 APs that can use over a gig of bandwidth. On these switches, we have 10 gig fiber ports, SFP ports, SFP plus ports. On our 8-port switches, we have 1 gig fiber ports. On these switches, we also have a USB stick for copying files to and from the switch. We also have your typical RJ45 console port. We also have, on the EX2K series, we also have an out-of-band network management port. So this is an Ethernet port dedicated to management. It's a different network than the normal in-band ports on that switch. So completely different, completely isolated, great for troubleshooting, or if you're gonna get into any trouble, you can still use that port over the network to manage the box. Okay, that's a quick overview on the enterprise switches. I'll go into more detail later. Our WISP switches, this is new. We actually are in beta trials starting last week. We're going to be shipping in November. I'll talk more about that. So very exciting for us, but we're coming out with 8 and 16 and 24 port models. We have not made a public announcement yet on these switches, but for these individual webinars, I do talk about it, give kind of a sneak peek. They come with removable power supplies. We have AC power supplies, DC power supplies. We have the integrated Cambium sync as well. Intelligent PoE, we support standards-based PoE. We support non-standard, low-voltage passive PoE. We support high-power 4-pair PoE, all the way up to 90 watts, so we can power some of Cambium's high-end radios. And then, of course, these switches are designed with an extended temperature range in mind as well. They are going to be in some type of cabinet or hut, but they might be outside in the elements. So heat and cold, they are designed to survive. Now, also in development is a switch that we're developing for outdoor video surveillance applications. So this switch is a true outdoor switch. You don't need a cabinet for this switch. IP67 rated switch, and it provides connectivity for all the devices that you may need at that outdoor location. A couple of video surveillance cameras, maybe an outdoor Wi-Fi access point, a subscriber module, a Cambium subscriber module, so you can get connectivity to that outside point. Think of like a light pole in a parking lot where you want to provide video surveillance. On that light pole, you'll have a couple video surveillance cameras, an outdoor Wi-Fi access point, a Cambium subscriber module. Anyway, this switch provides power, PoE, and connectivity to all those devices on that remote. Moving on. So what kind of timeline are we talking about here? What's the history of these switches? So it all started in December of 2018. We came out with our 4 base switches. These are 2 8-port switches and 2 24-port switches. In this year, earlier this year in the March timeframe, we released 4 new switches, and these are our 48-port switches and our multi-gig switch. So the 2016 M-P, I'll say a little bit about it now. I don't have another slide on it, but it's a hybrid switch. It has some ports for your standard 1 gig Ethernet, but it also has some ports that support 2.5 gig. It supports the 802.3 BZ standard. With that higher bandwidth, we can now give all the bandwidth that these new Wi-Fi 6 APs require, so they can fully utilize their capabilities. And because this switch is a hybrid switch, we get you a lot of this extra functionality and power, but at a reasonable cost. Okay. And then 3 of these new SKUs are 48 ports. We have a non-PoE version. We have 2 PoE versions. One is your standard PoE version, has 400 watts of PoE power budget. It's an internal power supply. The other one uses a removable power supply. You know, the customer themselves can slide the power supply in and out, and we sell 6 different power supplies, 3 AC supplies and 3 DC supplies. Okay. So what else on the enterprise side? Well, earlier this year, we released 2 switches of a new family. So all the previous switches are considered to be part of the EX2K family of switches. These new switches are the EX1K. Now these EX1K switches, what's the difference between the 1K and 2K? I'll talk about that later, but basically lower price, less features. Now, a little bit later this year, in August, we started shipping 8 ports. So now we have the 2 24-port versions and the 2 8-port. All right, so on the WISP I'm going to talk about more today, and we have 3 versions coming. The 16-port version, I'll talk about this later. The 16-port version starts shipping in November. The 8-port and 24-port start shipping in Q1. And then this outdoor video surveillance switch that I talked about, that is going to start shipping in Q2. So 3 families of switches targeted 3 different deployment scenarios. and this is kind of our time frame. Now here is a little bit more information on our enterprise switches. This picture here on the left, one of my favorite pictures, shows all of our switches, or almost all of our switches. You can see the 8-port versions, the 24-port versions, the 48-port versions, and then in the middle there you can see our hybrid switch, the multi-gig capable switch. We have a wide range of Wi-Fi access points, including our XV2 and XV3 that support the new Wi-Fi 6 solution. So you're going to get up to 2.5 gig of expanded throughput. Now to complete this picture, right? So this picture, we got the switches to provide your wired connectivity. We have the Wi-Fi access points to provide your wireless connectivity. But to bring it all together, we have our management solution, which is CN Maestro, and now we support XMS. It says coming soon here, but as of August, we're now shipping this. But anyway, you can take your choice between the two management systems. These are cloud-based management systems. You also have the choice of running them on-premise. But anyway, cloud-based management to control your access layer of the network, your switches, your access points. So a wired, wireless solution, fully cloud managed. A little bit about the software capabilities of these switches. And I'm talking about our enterprise switches, but we use the same software on our WISP switches as well. Definitely an enterprise grade solution, right? We back this quality up with a 5-year limited lifetime warranty. It's a fully featured switch, cross capabilities, security capabilities, filtering capabilities, a full suite of L2 and L3 switching capabilities. Fully managed, you can buy switches that are unmanaged. You can buy switches that are smart managed. For an enterprise deployment, for a robust deployment, you really want a fully managed switch. We have a complete comprehensive CLI. Our syntax that we use is similar to a Cisco syntax. If you know how to configure a Cisco box, you'll be able to configure our switches as well. In addition to CLI, we have our web interface, so it's a pretty fairly easy to use web GUI. And on top of that, of course, we have our CN Maestro and XMS that gives you a cloud management solution as well. Okay, what's next? Fiber uplinks or your backhaul. This backhaul, these are 10 gig fiber uplinks. Two of the switches in the picture to the left, the two 8-port switches, they use 1 gig fiber uplinks, but all of our other products use 10 gig fiber uplinks. I point that out and mention that because there are a lot of products out there, not good or bad, but a lot of the products only have 1 gig fiber uplinks. So you'll notice on our 24-port and 48-port, we have 4 10 gig uplinks. A lot of products out there might only have 2, and they might only be 1 gig uplinks. Intelligent PoE. So getting power, being able to power up your devices, being able to power up your Wi-Fi access points, being able to power up your video surveillance cameras with the power that comes over the Ethernet. This is a very common feature. We put a lot of time and energy into our PoE. We call it intelligent. We have the ability on a per port basis to enable PoE, to disable PoE, to toggle the PoE. Very useful for troubleshooting devices that aren't behaving the way they should. You can just toggle the PoE and that will do a power cycle out to that device. Stats are available on a per port basis as well. You can, at any point in time, you can get the instantaneous power draw on that device. How much power is it actually using? With 2 or 3 watts? Like an IP phone set only uses 1 or 2 or 3 watts. Or is it an access point, going 10, 15, maybe 20 watts? Or is it one of those high-end cameras that have a built-in heater and a built-in cooler that could be pulling 30, 40 watts type of thing. So intelligent PoE. Advanced features. So we do have some features we like to talk about. Very closely coupled, very nice overall solution with CN Maestro. So our cloud management It's not an afterthought. We did not put a square peg into a round circle. CN Maestro was designed from the ground up. I truly think it's one of the best cloud-based solutions out there. Under the topic of advanced features, you heard me mention L3 support. Yes, we support L3. Some of the switches in this space for the edge of your network will be L2 only. That's fine. Some of the switches out there do support L3, but they'll support static routing only. Some of the switches out there will support L3 and they'll support dynamic routing as well. And that's the path we chose. So we do support full dynamic routing on these switches. What else under advanced features? Well, the biggest feature of all that I love to talk about is policy-based automation. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Zero touch. So one of the themes of our switches, our hardware solution and our software solution, is ease of use. So we want to make it easy to deploy these switches, easy to maintain the switches, easy to manage these switches, and easy to troubleshoot these switches. You know, if something goes wrong in your network, you want to be able to troubleshoot it. Is the problem on the switch, or is the problem somewhere else in your network? Sometimes you don't know. So we try to make it easy for you to debug and troubleshoot these types of things. So anyway, zero touch is something that we're really big on, and I'm going to talk about that more in a little bit. One more item, total cost of ownership. So all the features that I'm talking about today, they come included with the base price of the switch. You don't have to pay a subscription. You don't have to pay an extra licensing fee. You buy the switch, you're done. Now, does that also include cloud-based management? Yes, it does. You get cloud-based management. I don't know where else you get that, right? Buy the switch, you get the cloud-based management, you get all the features I just talked about, and you get our limited lifetime 5-year warranty. So truly best in class when it comes to TC. Let me talk about the space. This is the market segment that we are going after, right? So I'm not saying that these switches are being used as data center switches. That's not the space I'm talking about here. I'm talking about a typical campus deployment, a typical edge of your network. In this edge space or the access layer of the network, it's a big market. $8 billion just for the switches. I'm not talking about the Wi-Fi access points. I'm not talking about, you know, the data center or core switches, just these edge switches, $8 billion. So most companies, or in fact, all companies I know of, they don't just offer one switch and say, okay, here you go. Here's your access switch. Most companies will come out with a few options to choose from. And we've done the same thing here at Cambium, right? So this is our long-term goal. Our strategy is to have a CN Matrix 1K switch, a CN Matrix 2K switch, and a CN Matrix 3K switch. And what are the differences between them? Well, you can look at the axes of this graph, right? There's going to be a difference in price and a difference in capabilities and features. Now, the CN Matrix 2K is available today, and I truly believe that that's the sweet spot, right? That's truly the sweet spot of this access layer market. However, if the customer is looking for something at a lower cost and he's more cost conscious, he can go for the CN Matrix 1K. And we have aggressively priced the 1K relative to the 2K. If you could, not the end of customer price, but if you look at the list price of these switches, the EX1K is approximately half the list price. Now, what are some of the differences between the EX2K and the EX1K? I've bulleted these differences. They're on the right-hand side. So these 5 differences also highlighted in yellow. The PoE power budget, how much PoE do you need for the devices that you're using in your specific network? Well, on the 2K, you get 400 watts. On the 1K, you get 200 watts. Not good or bad, it's just about what you need in your network. Number 2, with the EX2K, you get full dynamic routing that I talked about. We support OSPF, we support RIP. In the 1K, we support static routes, which is good. A lot of switches don't support routing at all. So we do support static routing, but we do not support dynamic routing on the EX1. On the EX1K, instead of having 10 gig fiber uplinks, we used 1 gig fiber uplinks. On the 1K, we removed the network management out-of-band port. You can easily manage the switch using the in-band ports. And then the very last bullet, my favorite feature, PBA, it's available on the 2K, no questions asked, comes with the price of the switch. On the 1K, it is available also, but we do have a license for PBA on the 1K switches. This chart is for the two 24-port 1K switches that I'm comparing. I have an identical chart for the 8-port switches. For the purpose of saving some time today, I'm not going to cover those 8 ports. Okay, a little bit about our CN Maestro. So we have supported CN Maestro since day one that we shipped our switches. And when I say support CN Maestro, I'm talking about the onboarding and registration process. I'm talking the ability to monitor stats. I'm talking about the ability to configure, to do configuration. I'm talking about the ability to troubleshoot. But when it comes to configuration, up until our release back in March, so this was a big release for us, release 3.0. In that release, not only do we support a template-based configuration mechanism, which a lot of people love, it's basically using COI scripts. But now, starting in March, we support a very nice user-friendly GUI-based interface. So for managing your complete network, your wired and your wireless solution with a very nice GUI is now very possible with CN Maestro. Now, what comes with these changes, we introduced virtual stacking on our switches. So you can create a virtual stack or a group of switches, and you can now manage those switches as if they were one. There's no limitation on these switches. You can have 2 switches in your virtual stack, or 1 switch in your virtual stack, or 10 switches, or 100 switches, no limit. Now, where do these switches have to be located? Do they have to be piled on top of each other? No. They can be located in different wiring closets of your network. They can be located on different floors of your building. They can be located in different buildings on your campus, or they can be located in different cities. So if these switches are a part of your CN Maestro account, you can group them together as a virtual stack. Okay, now which one of these switches is right for you? There's 14 different switches that we have, so that there's 8 switches in our EX2K series, and there's 4 switches in our EX1K series. So that's where you should start. Ask yourself, do you want a 2K switch or a 1K switch? So there's cost, of course, but the real differences in functionality is what I mentioned in the previous slide. PoE power budget, 10 gig uplinks, dynamic routing, and on the 2K, we have our multi-gig switch, right? Very cool. So once you make the decision between the 2K and the 1K, the next question to ask yourself, do you need PoE capability? Are you going to be plugging in devices that you want to power up using power over Ethernet? So do you want PoE, yes or no? Every switch we make 2 of them, right? One with PoE and one without. So that right there cuts it in half. Now, the final question is, well, how many ports do you need, right? Now, when I say 8, 24, and 48, it's actually 12, 28, and 52. So it's 8 ports plus the additional fiber optic. But anyway, for the access ports, these RJ45 access ports, do you need 8 ports? Are you going to be plugging in 8 or less devices, 24 or less devices, 48 or less devices? So after answering that question, after answering these 3 questions, you will quickly narrow down those 14 switches down. I just finished giving you a high-level overview of our enterprise switches. If you want any more details, please let me know. I'm now going to talk about our new upcoming tower switch, or for WISP deployments. This is the one page that summarizes it all. In the picture there, I have 3 switches. I refer to them as an 8-port, 16-port, and 24-port switch. But the first thing I want to highlight is that when I say 8, 16, and 24, it's actually 12, 20, and 28. So with these 8 copper ports, you also get the 4 10 gig fiber uplink ports. And you can see that clearly on all three of these switches. Here's the 8 ports, and then here are the 4 10 gig uplink. Now this 24 port switch is a little bit different. We have the 24 access ports are made up of 16 RJ45 1 gig ports, and it's made up of 8 1 gig fiber ports. And then you still have the 4 10 gig fiber. Okay. So Cambium Sync. For deploying this in a RISP environment with Cambium radios, we use a synchronization mechanism for timing, and that is a GPS sync signal that we get. And we get that GPS signal from an external antenna is one option, and we have an internal GPS module in our switch, so that's how we can use that external antenna. We also have, let me show you on these pictures, the yellow circle is where you connect the RJ45 jack that's right below that. That's where you can plug in a CN Pulse device. This CN Pulse device has its own GPS module built in. It's a product sold by Cambium, and it can provide GPS sync as well. So the decision for you is, do you want to use the antenna, or do you want to use CN Pulse, or do you want to use both? If you use both, that gives you redundancy, right? So internally, we will decide to use one or the other. And if one fails, then we'll hop over to the other. So it provides some nice redundancy. Another aspect to notice on these switches, these rectangular things on the right-hand side of these switches, these are our power supplies. They're removable. There's this little handle here, if you can see, and they just slide right out and slide in. So you'll notice that on this middle switch, this is our 16-port switch. This is the one that's shipping in November. It comes with 2 slots for power supplies. You do not need 2 power supplies. We have a nice cover that goes over one of the slots if you don't want to use it. The switch will work 100% capability, 100% functionality is available with 1 power supply, no problem. The reason for using 2 power supplies is simply for redundancy purposes. So if you want a more robust, secure deployment, and you want to protect against a power supply failing, you can put 2 in there. So you have the redundancy on the Cambium Sync sources. You also have the redundancy on the power supply sources as well. Now, getting back to the Cambium Sync. The Cambium Sync is available on every one of these RJ45 ports. So it's available on all ports. Now, switching gears, talking about PoE. Okay, so PoE is available. We have 802.3 standards-based active PoE, and that is available on all RJ45 ports, period. So we really believe in standards-based PoE. But we also support 4-pair high-power PoE, and we support that on half the ports. So on the 16-port switch, you can see it highlighted in green. These ports are capable of supplying high power using 4-pair PoE. So we can supply up to 90 watts on these 8 ports. So you can plug in 8 CN Medusa devices on this switch. All right. Also from a PoE point of view, we do support the non-standard low voltage passive PoE. Very common in the RISP industry, right? Cambium has gear that requires this. A lot of third-party gear that also requires it. So low voltage passive PoE. When I say low voltage, it's 24 volts. It will support anything from 24 to 30. And we support that on half of our ports as well. So in purple, you can say these are the ports that support low voltage passive. Okay. One more item to point out on this slide. Sorry. Everything is available on the front panel. So one thing I didn't talk about is this grounding lug nut here in the middle. This grounding lug nut is even on the front. So you do not have to access the rear of these switches for anything. It's all available. All right, that's our WISP switch. Let me change gears and talk about PBA. So PBA, zero touch. So zero touch is a term used very loosely out there. So what does zero touch really mean? I could ask 10 of you right now and I'd get 10 different answers. Let me tell you how I define zero touch. So zero touch means automating the configuration that is necessary. So most people think about zero touch for the initial deployment of your switch. So when you initially deploy your switch, you might want to configure some static VLANs, some link aggregation, so on. And people will, manually stage their switches before they deploy them. But we would like to automate that, which would enable us to claim zero touch. And we can automate that. With C and Maestro, fully automated. You plug in a bare bones, fully defaulted switch, we will automatically find C and Maestro out in the cloud. We will automatically register as long as this switch is a part of this person's account. It will download the initial config and automatic configuration. So there you go, zero touch. However, that is only half the story. In my mind, there's a more interesting part to zero touch, and that is for the configuration that is required on your switch for day-to-day operations. So when you add devices to your switch, you also need to configure the switch for that device. For example, you're going to connect an access point to your switch. You might want to, put that access point on certain VLANs. You might want to set some various QoS settings. You might want to configure some security settings. There's other configurations that you might want to do when you plug in that access point. How about a video surveillance camera? Same thing. There's configuration associated with that device. So how do you automate that, right? Now, it's not just about inserting new devices. It's also about removing devices. Maybe even more important. When you remove a device, you'd like to remove the configuration that's associated with that device. If you have some VLANs open on that port, you don't want to leave them open. What if they're sensitive VLANs for the finance network? You don't want to leave those open for the next device you plug into that port. So when you remove a device, it'd be nice to automatically clean up. So how do we do all of this? Well, we do all of this with the feature I've mentioned, policy-based automation. And that makes it really, really easy to do. So what is zero touch? It's automating your configuration, not only for initial deployment, but also for your day-to-day adds, moves, and changes of devices. All right, a little bit more about PBA, quick summary. What does it do for you? It automates your adds, moves, and changes of networking devices. It eliminates the error-prone manual configuration that can be very time-consuming. So it simplifies and reduces the troubleshooting associated with the network. Every port is created equal now, right? So this access point that you plug in, it doesn't matter where you plug it in. You can plug it in any port of any switch you want. And with PBA, the policy will automatically detect that device and apply the policy to the switch for that device on that port. It enhances the security of your network significantly, right? When you plug in a device, it auto segments that device into the right network. It puts it on the correct VLANs. You don't rely on manual human configuration. Overall, it reduces the expenses required to deploy and manage your switch. Okay, this how it works gets into some details. I'm gonna skip through this actually because I want to have time to give you guys a demo. A little bit of a summary here. Again, which switch is right for you? I kind of covered this before. I get asked this question a lot, but here's a quick summary. We have our EX1K family. It gives you both 8 and 24 port switches, enterprise grade functionality, L2 plus. So we have static routing, not dynamic. We have the EX2K. We have our 8 port switches, 24 port switches, and 48 port switches. Again, enterprise grade, L2 and L3, 10 gig uplink, dynamic routing, a large PoE power vector. And then our multi-gig switch, I kind of singled this one out. It's also a part of our 2K family, but it has 802.3BZ support for 2.5 gig capability. We also support, I did not mention before, We also support up to 60 watts of power per port. And of course, we support the enterprise grade L2, L3, 10 gig uplinks, dynamic routing, and a large PoE power. And then finally, what else do we have? We have our new tower switches for service provider or risk type of deployments. We have the Cambium sync available. We have the dual removable power supplies. We have the high power 4-pair PoE up to 90 watts. We have the support for low voltage passive PoE, and these switches are temperature hardened. So quick summary of all of our switches in the CN Matrix family. Recent highlights, CN Maestro with our GUI interface, which gives you virtual stacking, XMS support now. It's supported now, so if you like our Xeris products with the XMS cloud management, you can now deploy our switches with that solution. 48 port and multi-gig switches are now available. Cambium branded transceivers, I did not talk about this before, but for these SFP and SFP plus fiber uplinks, the transceivers that you need, we sell them. We've added this new EX1K family of switches. And then, of course, our tower switches coming out in Q4. PBA, true differentiator. I really cannot get this type of functionality from other vendors. And we put a lot of time and energy into this. We're continuing to expand it and to be able to do more. Okay, I'm going to jump into a live demo. And I'm at my house right now, and so my home network, we'll see if it works for this demo. But what am I going to show you today? So I have my network already in place. I have one switch here. And on that switch, I've configured some static VLANs, 100, 110, and 120. On the, whoops, let me get the demo powered up a second. Okay, I think be powering up. So anyway, on this existing switch, I have these static VLANs created. I also have two PBA policies set up. One policy set up for cameras, so it's going to look for cameras that detect the camera and apply the actions that are associated with that policy. I'll show you those actions later as part of the demo. And then I have a second policy, a second PBA set up for CN pilots. Those are the Cambium access points. So I have a policy that will detect Cambium access points, and when it detects it, it will configure the switch based on the policy, and I'll show you that. So that's my existing setup. Now with virtual stacking, I am going to add two fully defaulted switches. You know, it's as if they came fresh out of the box. And I'm going to add those two switches to this virtual stack. So I have a virtual stack of one today. I'm going to add these two new switches. And these two new switches, all I have to do is add them to that stack, and it will adopt the configuration of that stack. And what is the configuration of that stack? Well, it's these static VLANs and these two PBA calls. So on those two new switches, I'm going to connect in one access point and one video camera. And I'm going to watch these devices automatically be detected, and then watch the switch automatically configured. You'll see no manual configuration from me. And this demo will be done 100% from CN. So what is the demo? Two simple steps. I'm going to open up my CN Maestro account, and I'm going to claim these two switches. So I just enter the serial number. The next thing I do is I connect these switches to my network. So that's what I do. I just connect the wires into the network, and I'm done. Everything else is automated. So these switches that I connect in, I'll emphasize they're fully defaulted switches. No need for any pre-configuration. The configuration on the existing stack will be automatically applied to these two new units I'm plugging in. And I'm going to show all this to you using CMS. So I'm going to leave my slide deck now. Hopefully you can still see my screen, and hopefully things are working. Okay, here I am on my account for CN Maestro. I'm hoping you can see my screen now. Try to get this little widget out of that. Okay, good. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is go to the onboard, this where I'm highlighting it right here. This is the onboarding for onboarding new switches. So here's the screen, and in the right-hand side of the screen, there's a button that says claim device. So I'm going to claim a device. So in this interface here, I'm going to enter the serial number of the devices I want to claim. Now let me point out, to do what I'm doing today, all you need are the serial numbers. Let's say you buy your switches, but they're not going to show up for 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Or let's say you already have the switches, but you're not scheduling your downtime to plug in these new devices for another 3 or 4 weeks or 2 months or whatever. But you can still do everything I'm doing today ahead of time, so that you're all ready to go when you do get the switches. When you're ready to deploy the switches, all you do is plug them in, you're done. So anyway, let me go ahead and claim these switches. So I have my 2 serial numbers. I'm going to cut and paste them from another screen. And here I go. I'm going to paste them in, and then I'm going to say claim device. Whoops. So these devices have already been claimed. Let me try to unclaim them so I can give you the full demo. I forgot to set this up ahead of time. Oh, actually, so let me show you this interface right here. So these switch groups, these are all the different virtual stacks that I have that I like to play with. I JM Home, that's me, John Mead Home. So that's my network at home. And you can see that I have 3 switches. So I forgot to unclaim these switches. So let me do that right now. I'll show you. This will be interesting to show you how to do this. So let me go to that stack. So I'm going to click on JM Home. I'm going to go to the switches. So this lists the 3 switches. I'm going to select one of them, which is this one here. I'm going to go to Tools, Debug, and this is an interesting capability. You can enter any COI command you want through the cloud-based interface. So I'm going to say boot default --y is the syntax. And okay, good. I just booted it. Now I'm going to go back. I'm going to do the same thing to my second switch. See, that was 860, I believe. So now let's do this one. So again, Tools, Debug, COI, default --y. Okay, so anyway, now you guys know these 2 switches truly are defaulted, right? Now what I need to do is go to my switches. Now I have to delete them from my account so I can do the demo. And that's what I forgot to do before. So these switches, these 3 switches, I now want to delete these switches. So I can hit this little delete button on the far right. And it says, do you want to delete? Yes. So I'm going to delete it from my CN Maestro account. I'm going to do the same thing for this other switch. Hit the delete button. Yes, delete. Okay. Now I can start the demo. So I have, this is my, let me back up. So here are all this is my account. These are my virtual stacks. I'm going to click on JM Home, and I see that I have a total of 1 switch. And I don't have any that are offline. So it's a pretty exciting network. It's 1 switch, and it says right here, it's an EX2010-P. And CPU utilization, all kinds of pretty graphs I could show you. If it was a more interesting network, I could show you some pretty graphs. But anyway, that's what my current network is, 1 switch. I'm going to go to the onboarding screen. This is where we were before. I'm going to go to the claim devices. Now, since I deleted those devices from my account, I should be able to claim them right now. Okay, so I just pasted the 2 serial numbers into this window. I'm going to hit the claim button. Okay, so the claim was a success. Good, like when demos work. Okay, so here are the 2 units that I've claimed. Now, all I've done is claimed them, but now I want to assign them to one of my stacks that is in my existing network. Now, that's part of today's demo. If I want to, I could create a new stack with these switches. But for today, I'm going to hit this little pencil mark and to configure these 2 switches. And I need to say which switch group I want it to be a part of. So I have several to choose from. I'm going to use JM Home. And then the model number is a EX2010P. And I'm going to say save. I'm going to do the same thing for the other switch. The switch group is JM Home. And I'm going to save that. Okay, so step 1 in my demo is complete. I have claimed my devices and I've assigned them to the stack. But these switches have not yet onboarded with cmMaestro. I have to approve the device first. So there's a little button here for each device. I have to approve it. And I'm going to right now. I'm going to click approve. And then I'm going to click approve for the other one. Now, this process is not instantaneous. It takes 2, 3, 4 minutes. The switch has to do a DNS lookup, find out how to talk to the cloud, how to find cmMaestro. Once it finds cmMaestro, we have to make sure that these switches are actually a part of my account, that I have the right to claim these serial numbers. So it does all of that, and then it eventually onboards them. Now, the status that it's showing me right here is that it has done all of that. So it's green, it's been onboarded. So let me go back to the previous screens I showed you. So this is the tab I keep hitting called switch groups. I'm going to click on that. Here's all my switch groups again. I'm going to click on JM Home. And before I only had 1 switch in this virtual stack. Now I have 3. And I can go to the switches tab up top here, and it will show me the 3 switches that I have. There's a bunch of other tabs. There's the overall dashboard, which is what I showed you before. There's the switches tab that I'm showing you now. Notifications are for events and messages. Configuration is how I want to configure the stack. Let's say I want to create a new VLAN for the entire stack. I just create the VLAN once, like let's say VLAN 300, and it will get created on all switches as part of this stack. Statistics, awesome for monitoring. And then switch ports enables me to look at every port of my stack. So if I have a 48 port switch, let's say I have 10 of them, that's going to be 500 ports. So remember that. I'm going to go into more detail on that in a second. But anyway, for now, let's go to one of the individual switches that I just added. Okay, so here's a switch. I'm going to click on it. And okay, so this is a dashboard for an individual switch. Now, the stats that I have here are very boring because they're brand new on my network. I don't have any data to show you. Up here, it shows you the ports of it. So you can see that there's 10 ports. It's an 8 port switch with 2 uplink ports. So it's 10 ports in total. You can see that 2 of them are green, so 2 are active and online. 1 has a little lightning bolt there. I don't know if you can see that, or if my screen is too small, but that lightning bolt means that device is being powered up through a PoE. So if I have a PVA policy, and I do, the PVA policy won't be instantaneous because that end device, when you plug it in, it first has to power up, and then its own software has to run and initialize and start exchanging information. And then that's when we detect it. And then that's when we can apply the PVA policy. So, it takes a couple minutes, depending on the device, how fast the device comes. I'm going to do a refresh on my screen here. The upper right is a refresh button. This is a general refresh for cmMaestro in general. Okay. Now, I'm going to show you a feature where with my mouse, I can hover over one of these ports. So I'm hovering over port 1. Port 1 is down. I'm going to point out a couple things. In this down port, if you look four rows down, there's a field called description. That description is something that a customer can type in manually and say, You can say printer or camera or whatever he wants to type, he can enter that. So it helps him later when he's viewing all his ports. It helps him remember, oh yeah, that's where my printer is. So description field is very useful, but it's empty now because nothing's plugged in and because I haven't typed anything in. But I'm going to show you how that is automatically entered because of PBA. Another item I want to show you, go down about halfway down, you'll see the row called VLANs. Now, this VLAN, this port has VLAN 1. It is a member of VLAN 1. Well, VLAN 1 is the default VLAN for the switch, and all ports are a member of VLAN 1. If you go a couple rows down below that, you see PUE power priority. This is something I put into the PBA policy. So that PUE power priority, the default value is low. But in my PBA policy, I changed that. So automatically configured it. I forget what my policy is. It changes it to either high or critical. The other thing that I want to show you over here, and I'll show you that later actually. So let me hover over a port, port 5. So port 5 is where I plugged in. I don't know, what did I plug in? How do I know? Well, look at the description field, right? About four rows down, it says pilot policy. So that description field was automatically filled in with the policy that matched on that port. And that policy has a name, it's called pilot. So for C in pilot. So I know that I have an access point plugged into that. So I haven't manually configured anything. All this is automated, and this is what I want to show you. The next couple of minutes is the exciting part here. Halfway down the screen, look at the VLANs. Well, part of my PBA policy is to make that port a member of VLANs 222, 223, 224, and 225. That is a result of the PBA policy. So it automatically configured. All I did was plug the access point in. Now, why is that star there? The star there shows me that that configuration is dynamic. It's there because it's a result of PBA. If you go 2 rows down, the PUE power priority was changed from its default value of low to high. And then another item, the user priority, which is the last row, the default value is 0. I changed that to 2. So you can see all the automatic configuration that automatically happened. Now, if I come down here to the overall, this is the single switch. Again, this is the dashboard for just the one switch. If you look at the VLANs here, the switch, these are all the VLANs that have been created on the switch. We're not looking at it at a per port basis, but this VLAN, this switch has the following VLANs created. VLAN 1, but also remember, as part of my configuration, I had static VLANs created. So 100, 110, and 120. So those are statically configured as part of the registration process, and that's why they don't have any asterisks. But also created on the switch are 222, 223, 224, and 225, and that's because of the PBA policy. And again, there's an asterisk there that shows you that. Okay, I'm going to go to my other switch. Okay, my other switch, 880. Sorry, I'm navigating quickly here, so I'm going to go down to this switch and select it. So I'm going to go to the dashboard of my other switch, my second switch. And here it is. Now on this second switch, you'll see I plugged something into port 4. I think on the previous switch, it was port 5. Anyway, on port 4, I plugged something in. Let's hover over that port with my mouse. And again, the description field was automatically filled out, and this time it's been filled out with camera policy. So I know that it's a camera, a video surveillance camera that I plugged into that port. So no manual intervention at all. I just physically plugged in the device, and all of this stuff is automatically filled out. Look at the VLAN line. So for video surveillance cameras, I want it to be on the, let's say this video surveillance camera has 3 video streams that it keeps track of. So VLAN 777, VLAN 888, and VLAN 999 were dynamically created. The PUE power priority, dynamically created, changed from the default value of low to critical. And then, oops, sorry, I moved my cursor. And then down at the bottom again, user priority changed to 2. And then down over here, you see all this stuff. Okay, sorry, this is taking longer than I thought. I get that passionately involved in stuff. I'm gonna go to show you guys one more thing. So if I go back to my virtual stack, I'm going to click on the tab called Switch Ports. So Switch Ports here. This is where I can view every port in my network. Now I have 3 switches, so I have 30 ports to show you. But what if you had 10 switches and they were 48 port switches? You'd have 500 ports. How do you view 500 ports? It's hard. Well, we have a mechanism that makes it very easy for you to sort or filter on the ports. It works just like an Excel spreadsheet. So I also have tabs of information on the right-hand side here that my cursor is flashing over. General is what I'm showing you now. So this is general attributes of the port, physical attributes of the port, network-related attributes of the port, and security. Now, on any one of these screens, I can sort this by, so the operational state. Let's say I want to look at only the ports that are up. So I can easily do that. I just click up, boom. Now I'm looking at only my ports that are up. But what if I want to look at all ports? So I'm going to clear this. But I want to sort the ports. I want to see all the up ports and then all the down ports. I can just click on the column and, let me use the description field to show you this. So here's the description field. So if I sort on this column, you'll see that any port that has a description will be listed first. And you'll see this first one is pilot policy. So that is one of the ports that is populated with PBA. And then camera policy, the last one here. Now, I'll show you one more quick thing, network. If I go to the network tab here, it shows me a lot of really good information as well. So there's a column here called PBA policy. Let me sort on that one. Okay, so you'll see I sorted to show me any ports that have a policy, any policy. And in my entire network, I have 2 ports that a policy has been applied to. And you can see that these are the switches and the port numbers over here on the far left. You can see on this screen, well, what VLANs are these ports a member of? You can see that there. What else can you see? If I go to one of these other tabs, you can see more information. But anyway, a pretty quick demo here. So running out of time, let me show you one more thing. I'm going to unplug those devices. So I'm unplugging the camera, and I'm unplugging the access point as well. I'm going to go to one of my switches, and I'm going to hit the refresh button. So you can see that now I only have 1 port active here. So remember down here on the left-hand side, this list of VLANs that's available on the switch? You'll notice that it's VLAN 1, 100, 110, and 120. The 222, 223, 224, 225, those VLANs, they were automatically cleaned up and removed because I unplugged the device. I didn't manually remove that configuration. It happened automatically as a result. All right, I'm going to stop the demo there. Kind of ran out of time here. So, Julie, over to you. Thank you very much. We can do Q&A now if there's any questions.
Thank you very much, John, for that very in-depth and wonderful presentation. And yes, I do have some questions for you. Let's get started with the first one.
Okay.
First question. Okay. Do we have, oh, excuse me, let me go to the first question here. In regards to the WISP tower line, will this be an enclosed unit?
So this unit is not an IP-rated unit. You cannot put it in the rain or snow or dust or whatever. It belongs inside of a cabinet or a hut or a shack or a room of some type. It is enclosed, has metal enclosure, and they have fans and they have fan holes on this enclosure. It's your typical looking switch, very, very typical. It just has the extra features and functionality of the Cambium sync and all the different PoE modes and so on. Okay.
Thank you very much, John. Next question for you. Will the EX1K come in with the, does it come with the rack bracket?
Oh, that's a good question. We're treating it the exact same way as the EX2K. So on the 24-port version, the answer is yes. So with the rack mount ears, you can rack it in your standard rack, 19-inch rack. If you turn those ears 90 degrees, then you can mount it to a wall, no problem. For the 8-port switch, you can get, it does not come with rack mount ears. We do have them available as an accessory, and it comes as one short ear and one long ear. And that makes it so that you can mount it in a standard 19-inch rack. Or if you buy the accessory that is 2 short ears, again, rotating them 90 degrees, you can mount it flat against the wall. So the answer is yes for the 24-port, no for the 8-port. And we do the exact same thing on the 2K switch.
Thank you so much, John. Next question here for you. Regarding CN Maestro, can it be accessed remotely? Because that is my understanding. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. So like the CN Maestro that I showed you in this demo, that CN Maestro is nowhere in my house. It's out on some Amazon web server out in the world somewhere. And we do have servers in different regions of the world as well.
Thank you for that, John. Next question here for you. Regarding CN Maestro again, does it have any login restrictions for users and or admin logins?
Well, let's see if I can make up an answer. Just kidding. I am not the CN Maestro guru. I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but I don't know the answer. You know, can you read the question one more time?
Sure. Does it have any login restrictions for users or admins?
You have to have an account to be able to log in. Once you are registered as a Cambium customer, and actually I think there's a way to get an account without even being a customer, but once you go through the registration process, which you can do before becoming a customer, I believe, so you could actually, you know, fire up an account and play with it. But once you are a registered customer and are given an account, then you can log in. I'm not sure if that's what the question actually was, but anyway, that's what I do know.
Thank you very much, John. No problem. Next question here for you. Is there a phone app that I can use to onboard the hardware?
Awesome question. We are working on a app right now that you can get from, you know, Apple or the other guys, and that you can run on your phone that will let you do some very, you can absolutely do the basic as far as onboarding, registration, and looking at some basic information and doing some very basic config. That application, again, that's not my baby. It's called Swift, and we are in the middle of rolling that out for the CN Matrix switches. It's already been rolled out for other Cambium products. I don't have the dates for you, but someone can get you a date on this. This is called Swift, so CN Swift.
Excellent, John. Thank you so much. Last question for you, and thank you so much for that demonstration. The question is, do we have access to the free demo as well as the trial?
Sorry, I swallowed my water. Access? Do you have access to the free demo? I'm not sure which free demo are you talking
about? Okay, we can clarify that later on. But is there okay, no problem.
Yeah, you know, so I'm sorry, I do not have a CN Matrix environment set up that I can just give access to for free demos. I don't have that, but almost all the contacts in the field, our inside sales, our RSMs, almost all of them do have access to a demonstration environment. Or if you'd like to go into any more detail at all, absolutely. You can see I kind of get wrapped up into this stuff passionately, but absolutely I'm willing to spend time with you.
Excellent. We can certainly follow up with you with that. And John, thank you so much for answering all of our questions today. And thank you to everyone for attending today's webinar. And if anyone has any further questions, please feel free to contact your sales rep or email us at sales@microcomtech.com. And if you wish to view any of the products mentioned or shown here today, please visit us at www.microcom.us. And please remember, this webinar presentation has been recorded and will be uploaded to our Microcom YouTube channel so you can view it again. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, John. Appreciate all of your work with today's presentation demonstration. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.